Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoint and it has been 10 years since the PS Vita launched, and in that time we have seen two models released. We had the original OLED and then the later slim version. We also had a selection of AAA games, loads of retro games, and of course the rise of the modding community. We've also seen Sony drop all support for it, almost disabling the PS Store entirely back in 2021. But with all of that said, is it still worth buying or playing a PS Vita in 2022? I still feel the PS Vita is one of the most underrated consoles out there. Now let me know if you've had, still have, or have always wanted a PlayStation Vita. I'm always interested in hearing what your thoughts are. Okay, so first up, considering this is a 10-year-old design, it still looks pretty good. I've got the original OLED black version here, but the glossy front panel along with the silver logos and branding look nice. Even the tiny little PS icons on the rear panel are awesome. Then around the front we've got a 5-inch touchscreen OLED display, which was way ahead of its time. In the later model they actually removed the OLED and swapped it for an LCD screen instead. And considering how nice this screen looks, it's not even 720p, it's actually just 960 by 544. And as for the controls, well, the Vita does almost everything that we need. In fact, you could say it did too much. On the front we have the two analog sticks, the D-pad, the triangle, circle, cross and square, as well as the home, select and start buttons. On the top we have the L and R buttons, or the shoulder triggers, and a few others like the volume and the power buttons. Now for its time the L and R buttons were absolutely fine, but I think today we would probably want either triggers or the addition of L2 and R2 buttons. Now this rear panel on the back isn't just a cool design, it's actually a touch panel, a bit like the touch bar that we have on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 controllers. For me, I've never been a fan of this. I know some games incorporate it quite well, but most of the time you end up tapping it by mistake while trying to hold it. Which is another thing. Now this is very easy to hold, but I find that over long periods of time it still gets a little bit uncomfortable. I think that's a combination of the analog stick placement being quite low, and the fact that it's a pretty small device. Day to day this is fine, but adding a grip definitely helps for those long periods. It makes it feel a little bit more natural. Now if only Satisfy did grips for the Vita like they did for the Switch, this would be an awesome addition. And when it comes to the games, well, this is where you'll either love or hate this console. For me, it's the perfect retro, nostalgic and arcade game machine. Out of the box, there are still hundreds of PS Vita games to download or buy, even in 2022. And that goes for both digital and physical games. So games like Uncharted, Gravity Rush, Persona, Killzone and even Little Big Planet. But it's not just the Vita games, there's a library of PSP and PlayStation 1 games available through the store. Honestly, there are some real gems on here that are still worth playing today. Only last week I actually downloaded the original Driver game for £2 from the store. I remember playing this back on the PlayStation 1 when I was a child, and it's awesome being able to play these again on the Vita. Now although the library of games on the Vita store or second-hand market is great, what you see now really is what you'll get. With the lack of support from Sony in the early years, it meant that the big developers just didn't get on board with new titles. So although the Vita did exist over a long period of time, other than the original launched games as well as JRPGs, not a great deal of new games launched that were worth playing later on. Saying that, I'm always open to suggestions for new games to play, so drop any of your recommendations below that we should be playing. But one of the main reasons I actually bought a Vita about 5 years ago now was for trophy hunting on the go. Now not everyone wants to get trophies or platinum a game, but it's something that I've done for a while, and being able to do it on the Vita is great. Of course the store is filled with cheap and cheerful games if you want to platinum a game in an hour or two, but there are also some incredible games online that are built just for the Vita. So other than playing an existing library of PSP, Vita and PlayStation 1 games and trophy hunting, what else does the Vita do that's worth buying one in 2022? Well, there is a huge community behind modding or hacking the Vita. This really does unlock the console's true potential and shows just how powerful this awesome console is. And once it's modded, you can play pretty much any retro game that you can think of. That includes the PlayStation 1, NES, SNES, Game Boy and PSP. Now there are already loads of PSP and PS1 games on the store, but unfortunately not all games are officially supported. This way you can download a huge library of games, unofficially of course, to play on the Vita. You can also unlock the ability to use normal SD cards with an SD card adapter. This means you don't need to use the Sony SD cards, which are both hard to get hold of and really expensive. Now believe it or not, I've not actually modded mine, and the only reason for this is I don't want to risk my PSN account being banned. And that's of course because I use this Vita to get trophies on the go. I'm sure there are workarounds and low risk options, but for now I'm still playing the official games and I'm happy to leave the modded route for another day. But if you've modded your PS Vita, what have you used and what are the benefits to you? A few other features that the Vita supports is remote play, and that allows you to play your games from your PlayStation 3 or your PlayStation 4 straight to the Vita, a bit like how the remote play app works on the iPhone for the PlayStation 5. And over the years, loads of apps have been removed or discontinued from the Vita store. That includes things like YouTube, Facebook, and a few others. But there are still a few that work today, and those that don't can usually be accessed from the browser instead. As for the overall UI and the store on the Vita, I think it looks fine. It's clean, minimal, and even today it has that PlayStation feel to it. You can definitely tell it was designed around the same time as the PlayStation 3. You can even go ahead and add themes to it, which is why I'm using the 20th anniversary theme from the store. And if you wanted to, you could add your own wallpaper or background as well. But as Sony drops support for the Vita, I'm not sure how long we will get updates. I can see the latest version is 3.74, released in May 2022. And as for mobile gaming, I think the Vita can easily stand its own against mobile phones. I mean, sure, you could pick up an iPhone or an Android device and emulate the games on there, maybe even with better graphics, but you'd really need a third-party attachment to replicate the physical controls. But today, with things like the Switch and the Steam Deck, it just shows how much we like buttons over touchscreen-only mobile gaming. And with the recently released Backbone 1 controller for PlayStation, this reaffirms that mobile gaming is still popular today. And the fact that PlayStation have opted to make this accessory official, could it be a sign that they are once again taking mobile gaming seriously? I did actually order one of these a few weeks back, but unfortunately it's still shown as awaiting shipping. As soon as I get my hands on one of these, I will be doing a review on the channel, as I think for the money, this is a really good accessory. Of course, the Vita isn't the only handheld console on the market right now. We've got the Switch and of course the new Steam Deck. Both of these offer a whole different experience and a different library of games, and they are incredibly popular and have shown that mobile gaming is here to stay. But with that said, why did the Vita fail? Some say it was ahead of its time and it just brought too many features to a handheld console that no one really wanted at the time. With these extra features, it added to the overall cost of the hardware and it meant that consumers just couldn't justify the cost. It didn't help that the memory cards were so expensive, and as Sony locked us in with their own rather than allowing normal third-party SD cards, it added hundreds of pounds to an already expensive console. And finally, Sony just didn't support it as much as it deserved. The backwards compatibility was limited, and although PS1 and PSP games were added, there was no support for PS2. With a lack of support meant that AAA games were limited too, and that shows in the lineup that we've seen today. Developers couldn't get on board with a console that Sony simply just did not care about. But what if you want to buy one of these today? Well, Sony officially ended production of the PS Vita back in 2019, which, considering it launched between late 2011 and early 2012, that wasn't a bad run. But what that means is buying one today is a little more difficult. The obvious place to start is somewhere like eBay, Gumtree, or Facebook for a second-hand unit. And then you need to decide if you want the original OLED model or the later slim version. I think the slim version is actually nicer looking overall and it's a lot more modern, but I still prefer the screen on the original, and that's why I chose that one. Price-wise, looking online today, you're looking to pay around £100 or $150, which isn't a bad price. So the ultimate question is, should you buy or own a PS Vita in 2022? I think the short answer is yes, you should, but it really depends on if you see value in playing a PlayStation or emulated retro games on the go. I think the new Backbone attachment could be a real sign that PlayStation are showing some interest again in mobile gaming, but does that mean that we will see a PS Vita 2 in the future? I'm not so sure. But if you want to play PS games on a classic machine with the option to mod it to play even more, this is hard to pass on. Well, if you drop a PS Vita 2022 in the comments, I will give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my PS5 update video next, as that covers the new 1440p and other updates that we're getting on the PS5. Thanks for watching, please like, sub and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.